They want to. So we're going to open the road district number 3, May 22nd meeting. Okay? Okay. Sorry. So can we have a call to order? Or I need a roll call. Sorry. All right. Yes. Here. Councilor Booth. Here. Councilor Morris. Here. Here. Councilor Stevenson. Here. Councilor Townsend. Here. Wonderful. Okay. Consideration of the previous minutes. Again, I was not present, so I'm not going to make a move.
I'll make a move to accept these minutes.
And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I know. Out there?
No, I was not.
And you're in Elkins Worth there right now, okay? Can you ask them or close the doors?
I just got more.
Hey, it's too loud right here. They're asking if you could move further out.
Thank you. It's okay. All right, so the city manager is going to have a presentation of the road district budget.
So the road district is effectively a pass-through fund. It is simply a fund in which we collect road district tax, and then that money is transferred into the street fund of the city. That is, we don't take any action in the actual road district itself at all. We literally bring funding in, and then that funding effectively transfers over to the street fund in order for us to fund things like some of the street projects. And that's really it.
Okay, excellent. Does anybody have public comment? Right, that's where I'm asking for public. It says receive comments from public regarding road budget.
Yeah, so you actually have to open the public hearing.
Okay, so now I'm opening the public hearing. I thought that was what I was doing when
Yeah.
it started.
No, that's the meeting. But because it's a public hearing, you actually have to formally open the public hearing,
Okay.
and then ask for comments, and then close the public hearing, and then continue on.
All right, so we are in the middle of the meeting, but now I'm opening the public hearing. And I'm asking if anyone would like to make a comment in regards to road district number 3. There's a hand up. Please come to the podium.
Hi, everybody. Hey, so the conversation that I had with Dan about the projects going on, and we had a great conversation about how the dump trucks, when they get the free builder from other projects going on, that if they could dump on the road and come back through our private property, it's actually a really good way, correct me if I'm wrong, for the city and township to work together to save all the taxpayers' money, building up the roads with the free builder that we get from the various projects going on. Sounds like you guys have a lot of projects going on, so it's going to be a busy summer. So I think it would be a really good idea if next month we're requesting to be put on the agenda to discuss it. Thanks.
Cool, thank you very much, Todd. Anyone else? Okay, anybody from council have a comment? All right, then I'm gonna close the public hearing. And then we're going to discuss and
action items, consideration of resolution RD 2601, adopting a budget for fiscal year 26 and making appropriations. Is there any discussion or action from the council? No? Okay, and then do I say good to the order before
No, we
we
have to make a motion and approve it.
Yeah, you need a motion to approve that resolution.
Well, I wasn't there, so someone else make the move, please.
I make a motion that we accept the resolution number RD 26-01, adopting the budget, making appropriations, imposing and categorizing the tax.
Thank you. Does anyone second that?
I'll second.
Okay, so we'll give Dunn the second. Okay, all in aye?
Aye.
All right, and then I'm a no. Okay, so then I can adjourn this one and go to the next, right? All right, so we're adjourning this. And now we're moving on to the Urban Renewal Agency, May 22nd, 4 p.m. Call to order, roll call, please.
Okay, one more time.
It's a lot of practice. I am here.
Okay, Council President Dunn.
Here.
Councilor Booth.
Here.
Councilor Morris. Here. Councilor Widow. Here. Councilor Stevenson. Here. Councilor Townsend.
Here.
The quorum is present.
Thank you. Consideration of the previous minutes.
I motion we accept the previous minutes.
And a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And thank you. And then the city manager's presentation of the urban renewal budget, please.
So the urban renewal districts and urban renewal budget are a relatively complicated process in which the city takes the growth in taxes over a certain area, over a certain period of time, and dedicates it into a specific fund. And the idea behind the fund is to identify certain and specific projects generally related to blight or civic improvement that need to occur to allow for growth and expansion of city values. And so originally this was adopted back in the mid-aughts. And the idea specifically when this one was adopted was that there was about to be a substantial development in town called the Naples development, that we would have captured all of that revenue and it would have given a tremendous amount of influx of funding to be able to do things like the sidewalk along Crestline and other major projects in town that we were very excited by. Unfortunately, this was then precipitated by the collapse of the housing market and a really slow growth and very slow development and new home growth. So we have not seen this fund, like other cities have seen these funds grow so substantially within a couple of years that they're bringing in millions of dollars a year into these funds. Ours, as you'll note, is estimated to be bringing in just about $100,000 this next year. So our fund is growing very slowly. This means that until we get up to a higher amount, some of the large projects that we had scheduled really just can't be accomplished yet. And it is our hope that when we do see some significant development, that will ramp up. But until then, we kind of are in kind of a waiting game where we tackle maybe minor projects every year out of the renewal district fund. But we don't really try to go after the whole goal here is to avoid borrowing without having a steady stream of income paying it off that affects everyone. Without passing, most borrowing at a city level is done by a bond, which increases people's taxes. The urban renewal district is a way of doing and creating a borrowing mechanism that has no net effect on your individual taxes. Unfortunately, we're just not seeing that growth. So for another year, we're basically just keeping the status quo as we build up this fund in the urban renewal district, so that eventually we will be able to say, hey, we have enough money to do X, and the council would then look at the priorities and say, hey, wow, we can do that now. Or we see a substantial development, like if we're up into the way station, you might see 250 homes. That will spur some pretty significant ability to do say that it's going to do a lot this next year, but honestly, we're still in a waiting game to see those funds out. One of the target projects that we had on here that was one of our big ticket items was actually the sewer line to the industrial park. We are very fortunate in that we received a large grant from the state to do that project independently. And so we're taking away the projects that the urban renewal district was designed for, but we still have some big ones on there. And so the council will be looking at that over the next year to see where we are. Probably mid-year is a good time for that kind of meeting, and then evaluating how they want to move forward.
So I know costs keep going up as well, but we have talked in the past about what that number needs to be before we can actually bond, and I suppose that depends on the project that we want to do, but I know we need a certain amount to be able to pay whatever the payments are on the bond.
You know, we need to be seeing an income stream coming in of about $300,000 to $350,000 for the projects that we had identified originally. And that's where the urban renewal committee, this later this year, and you all can then shift some of those priorities to consider a lower amount. But again, it really comes down to we did not see the growth. If we saw a reasonable growth pattern that we would expect, and that we've seen some of our cities go through. And again, everybody with the UGB or with the Urban Renewal Agency and Urban Renewal District has different outcomes in this. I talked to city managers, matter of fact, I talked to city manager up in the gorge, where they were bringing in within 2 years almost $13 million. And so they opened and closed their Urban Renewal Agency within 6 years. They still spent $50 million on a huge project, but we're just not there, and I don't see us getting there. But I do see realistically that if we get a couple of the larger properties that we have that are available for development to develop, it will hit those targets as we hope. If you remember, the Naples development was 250 condominiums and homes along a 18-hole golf course. That would have done all of the projects we had targeted.
So we don't necessarily need to wait until we can get a big enough bond to do all the projects.
No.
So we'll kind of pick them off at one
That's
at a time.
exactly. You know, what we need to do is have a meeting and start looking at the projects that were originally slated and seeing if there's anything that people are comfortable with either doing now or, you know, determining that we've done the project through different means, removing them, and then seeing where our threshold, where we want our threshold to be before we try to go after these projects.
So then if we pick one off and bond for that one, does that mean then we have to wait till that is paid off before we can go to another
Yes.
project?
Yeah, that's why generally you do these as one big,
Yeah,
big approval.
So, a long time.
Okay. Any other comments from council? All right, I'm gonna close this meeting, and now we're going to open the public hearing. So I'll put it inside of the meeting. And now we're able to receive public comment. Does anybody have any public comment that they would like to make regarding road budget?
Urban renewal.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what I was doing there. My glasses got.
No, you're right. There's a typo.
Oh, okay, public regarding not road, but urban renewal budget. All right. Once, twice. Okay, we're gonna move on. I'm gonna close the public hearing. Now I'm gonna come back to the council and we're gonna have discussion, action item, consideration of resolution UR 2601, adopting an urban renewal agency budget for fiscal year 26. I was going to have to read something.
No.
Not this one. Okay. These other two resolutions are for the main budget. All right, consideration, council?
I motion we accept the budget for the 26 years, or 2026. Yeah, we are 26.
Can we get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
do I go back into the meeting?
Yeah, you're
We're
back.
back into the meeting now. And now we're at our regular meeting, and we're gonna have a presentation of the budget by the city manager.
Here. So, the city every year reviews and adopts a budget for both our enterprise funds, which are the water, wastewater, and streets. Those feed into a shared fund called the Public Works Fund. And we also have what I like to call the Gang of Six, which is the general fund. The general fund is things like the library, parks and recreation, the public safety, planning, community and economic development, and general administration. So all of these funds are funded out of the revenues that are received by property taxes, by the shared state shared revenue. Shared revenue, by the way, is the marijuana tax, the liquor tax. We receive monies from franchise fees, and all of that basically boils down to this is how much money the city gets to spend on operating the city. It's very important to note that funding that comes into the water fund effectively stays in the water fund. We can't, it's like a separate company. Same with the wastewater. So there was a question earlier about the funding, the $85,000. All of that came out of the wastewater reserves to pay for that property purchase. That piece of property then became part of the wastewater plant, believe it or not, because they're contiguous. And when we broke off those two lots, the sale of those goes right back into the entirety of that money. So the $65,000 we received actually after commissions to the 61, but the entirety of that money goes back into the wastewater reserve fund. The goal of splitting off those two properties was specifically to alleviate the burden of the taxpayer who have bought that property. So originally we bought the property for $85,000. There was some cost of development, but effectively after we sell those two properties, we will have paid zero for the large fall property that we needed. And at the same time, we will actually have additional monies that will go into the wastewater reserves. And that's important. Wastewater reserves are, and the water reserves are when we do a big capital project or we're doing a sewer installation. I'll give you a great example of how we use the wastewater reserves in recent history. We put an extension of our sewer line down Corona Court, right over by the beach. I think it was about 110 feet extension or so, or 300-foot extension, allowed multiple homes to hook into our sewer system, so we get additional sewer customers, so it has a payback period. As well, we are taking septic systems, especially some of the homes were right on the cliff and the beach. We're taking septic systems that are leaking and creating some issues out of play, which is fantastic for us. And so as we do sewer expansions, this is where our reserves come in. A great example is we were looking at having to tackle the industrial park sewer with some reserves because it was looking to be significantly over budget. We were very fortunate in that we were able to create a partnership with the school district that took one of our biggest expenses, the lift station, out of that project. And that's going to allow us to finish the project hopefully totally under budget at this point. So we're very excited about that. The problem is you get these large grants and awards, and it takes so much time between when they're awarded and when you engineer and can actually go out to bid for them. You get 2 to 3 years of inflation. And certainly in the last few years, that inflation has been incredibly horrible. We're finally seeing that temper down quite a bit, but that has been devastating to some of the projects that we're doing. We were very fortunate. We brought in our water tank project and our water tank reclamation, where we took our 2 million gallon tank and literally drained it and painted it. We brought that all in budget, which was fantastic. We did not have to grossly tap the water reserves. Now we did use some water reserves, but it was for some add-ons that we did that we thought were important while we were doing the project, and little things like ensuring that the roof wasn't going to fall in when they discovered that it was going to. Little things like that, and some of them are small, some of them are not. I'll give you a great example of a small project. We approved a change order to paint the bottom 5 feet of our 2 million gallon tank, so that it was not as susceptible to some of the weeds, moisture, etc. That against steel are not necessarily a great thing. You put a protective coating on it. It also, in my opinion, as somebody who's driven up there a couple times, makes it a lot easier to see when you're backing up because it's this really ugly yellow paint. So I think there's some safety benefits to it too, but I think that's just me. So we have in each of our different budgets, a income line coming in, and then we spend our monies. We spend most of our monies on maintenance and repair. We do a couple big projects. Our big project scheduled this year for water have kind of damped down. We've got a couple. We've got one specifically that we're looking at, which is we had a spray event this last year that really alerted us to wanting to do something to protect the watershed up there. So we got a $45,000 grant in which we're doing what's called a source water protection plan. This is a plan that allows us, I'm somebody who's railed against plans in the past because it's a lot of paperwork that sits on a shelf. But what I've discovered is a lot of these plans are useful when you go after grants. They want to see that you have this plan in place. So we're putting that plan in place so that we can then go start talking to the warehouser, start talking to the feds, and start talking to other partners about being able to actually purchase some of this watershed land and put it in a protected trust. By doing so, we then secure our city's water supply for the future. We're not having to worry about companies coming in and doing a clear cut and spread. We monitored it very closely this last year so that it did not have an effect, and we want to ensure that in the future this is just not an issue. A lot of municipalities have done this, and some very successfully. One of the things that's very important as we look at that is we want to ensure that our plan doesn't put the funding or doesn't put the property, if we do acquire it, in an area that a future council could then decide to log it for funding. So we want to partner with some of the trusts that just preserve it as old growth. And so that's the type of thing that we do in water. In wastewater, our big project this next year is just finishing the water project that we're doing, sewer project that we're doing at the sewer plant right now. That'll be tremendous. And then the other big project is obviously the sewer to the industrial park. That represents our big capital expenditures there. We've also undergone a fairly rigorous program of replacing and repairing our lift stations. That's where, when you do have a sewer system pumped to some location, it often needs to be pumped to the final destination, and those are those lift stations that we have around town. And we've done a really good job of starting to stabilize and do a lot of preventive maintenance so that when we have large storm events, so that when we have power outages, that everything works seamlessly. Our goal is that when we do have a big event, that our public works crew doesn't even get called out in the middle of the night and are able to go check it in the morning. It used to be pretty regular that our crew would be babysitting these things all night long. In our streets, we talked earlier about the two big street projects we hope to do, Cedar and the end of Alder here. The other project that we are working on and we're starting to put money towards and getting grant money for is Crestline Drive, and specifically Crestline Drive right at the end by the park. You'll note that Crestline Drive is trying to fall down into the park. It really likes the new park and wants to be part of it. That road is getting very, very concerning. We had a large leak there last year, and as we examined it, we found a lot of very hollow chasms underneath it, which means that we've seen a lot of water infiltration. When we looked at it a while back, it was in the millions of dollars to fix. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get get grants for the engineering so that we know exactly how much and exactly what needs to be done to fix it. And our goal would then be to go to the legislature or to ODOT and try to get that funding so that we can actually engage in a multi-million-dollar project, not on the back of the 2,350 residents in Waldport. We've been very successful in doing that, where we're not burdening our citizens with these large projects. I think most of the projects I just described comprise about $8 million. Not a cent of that has come from Waldport citizens, other than the taxes you pay to the state. So overall, we've done a very good job of getting these large projects in and under budget, but we do have some significant projects that we need to handle. Another one that I think is important to mention is we are looking at road construction for an emergency access road off of Waldport Heights. Waldport Heights has a very narrow and very unsafe road, in my opinion, that goes up the hill, and then there's no good way off. We're looking to create effectively a well-maintained logging road off that, so that if there is an emergency or if there's a fire, that there is a second egress point that people can actually get out, not regularly, because that will be really expensive, but in an emergency or in a situation where somebody needs to get up there, and we have a tree down, which we saw just not that long ago, where we do have a second point of egress. That I think is very important, and that I think that entire neighborhood is in danger, simply because it only has one in and out at this point. Those are kind of the enterprise fund summaries. In looking at the general fund projects, we're going to have some IT infrastructure needs at City Hall, but those are relatively minor in the scheme of dollars. Land use planning, AmeriCorps, we've actually shifted our dollars from AmeriCorps to mapping right now. And the reason is we had a conversation with the AmeriCorps folks, and unfortunately they felt that with the current administration, they weren't sure that they were going to be there in 6 months. So we are funding the effort that we need to. Our goal with our mapping project is we want our citizens to be able to log in and know when they're looking at a piece of property where the water and sewer is relative to that. There's some other cities who have done a great job of that, and it really allows for ease of development when developers are looking at developing property. We also feel that it gives empowerment to our citizens just to see where their infrastructure is, what their infrastructure is, and provide information on what is near them and what's around them. One of the most common calls we get is, hey, we see water coming out of the street here. What is that? Often it's a stream, but sometimes, as we saw just in front of City Hall the other day, we had a water line just crack and water just shooting out of the ground. It's great to know and be able to have that infrastructure mapped out, not only just for the citizens to know what's there, but for our public works crew to know which valves to turn it off. And all this will be mapped out and readily available. This will be really great. That institutional history codified in the system will be fantastic. Public safety is another one. We have negotiated a change in our public safety contract a year ago to go from what we had as 2 full-time deputies. We are now sharing one of the deputies with Yahats. We spoke with Yahats city manager, and they indicated they were very happy with that arrangement this year, and we're looking forward to continuing it. We really wanted to shift to a more shared agreement with the county, but we needed Yahats on board for that, and I don't think the county is really ready to have that discussion yet. So as we saw at the April council meeting, we're continuing on with the same 1.5 sheriff's deputy contract. Library services, we're going to see some changes in personnel this year with our main librarian retiring. That is going to shift quite a few people's jobs around a little bit. I think we have a fantastic crew in the library, and I really hope that we can provide them the support and the necessary manpower that does not change how they feel about coming to work every day. But you know, these shifts are always a little disruptive. But we really hope that we can minimize it and make sure that they feel well supported and that our library can remain open the hours that it is, and that we can continue to expand programs as necessary. Parks and recreation. The big goal at the end of this next year is going to be to finish Southworth Park. I know that the playground looks amazing, and it looks like, oh, it's ready to go. The problem with that is there's still a lot left to do. We've still got trails or pathways to put in place. We've still got parking spaces to put near the playground. We've still got some roads to pave. We've got fields. The fields are in great shape, but we promised the citizens a track around the field. So we're working with different vendors there to supply that. We are going to be putting in a lot of lighting so that the park is safe, especially in the fall and winter when people still want to be able to utilize the park, but it does get darker a lot sooner than we like. We also are putting in, through a partnership with Pioneer, Wi-Fi throughout the entire park. While I know that it seems like a simple thing, the number of parents who really want to be able to be there with their kids, filming video of their kids on the playground, but not be disconnected from the world is very important. We know that a lot of times there's some frustration about not getting cell signals or not being able to post something. So we are enabling those so that the park can be utilized by all sorts of different users. Like I said, we will have 4 picnic shelter areas. We will have 2 pickleball courts. We will have a basketball court. The basketball court was specifically designed to be large enough so that if at some point people feel that the basketball over at the community center is better, it can shift into a tennis court. So we have kind of kept in mind the expandability of some of these features. We've got a great soccer field and a great softball field that's utilized pretty heavily. We've also made a bunch of infrastructure improvements over to Kendall Memorial Field, and we'll continue to do that. What we want is people to come to Waldport, see our fields, and go back to wherever their schools and say, we love playing in Waldport, their infrastructure is so nice. And that also includes building some new bathrooms, which is high on our list. Unfortunately, I think we're going to open the playground with some porta potties. Please understand that that's not the long-term plan. We do have real bathrooms coming. We just got to do what we got to do, and I don't think the kids are going to want to wait all summer for that playground. So the playground will be open with a lot of the rest of the park not done. We apologize, but just know that we're continuing to plug away as best we can. Community and economic development is the last of the gang of 6. It is kind of keeping the status quo right now. The city has taken on permanently the fireworks show. There was some discussion on social media the other day about moving the drones. I would absolutely welcome that idea if somebody can find me an extra 50 grand. That's the difference in the cost between our fireworks show and the drones. And unfortunately, the drones aren't a one-time purchase. It's $75,000 every year. I'm dying to see how it's received in Lincoln City. Lincoln City is taking it on this year, and their city manager, who's retiring here in about a month, this is their first go at it. I'm eager to see how the citizens respond. I think there will be a group that love it. I think there will be a group that hates it. It's that group in the middle that I'm really concerned about, because that'll sway whether they get business from it or not. I think that's one of the big reasons that we do it, is it brings people to town. It brings people come every year from afar just for this show. So I don't want to start mucking with that at all. But we also have a roof to fix at both the library and the interpretive center. And we have a lot of stuff going on in the chamber. Community economic development, it's important to note that we have to spend a lot of this community economic development money the way we do. The reason is that the community economic development fund is primarily where we transfer our transient rental tax, or our short-term rental tax, from the hotels, from the Airbnbs, from the vacation rentals. State law says that we have to spend a significant portion of that funding on tourism-related activities. And that's what the CED is all about, is tourism-related activities. So we have to meet that legal obligation. The last couple of funds that are worth talking about are the SDC funds. SDCs are those things that you never think about again until you decide to build a home, and then they really make you mad. Essentially, if you think about everyone in Waldport owns the water plant, everyone in Waldport owns the sewer plant. When somebody builds a home, this is them buying into the mortgage. That's what SDCs are really about, them really buying into the infrastructure that you've all paid for years. So we've got a decent balance in some of these. That allows us to do infrastructure projects that allow for the growth, or that reinforce the growth. I will say that we just got a very large SEC check yesterday from the new glamping resort that's going in. That's always great to see because that does allow us to do these infrastructure improvements that will allow for future growth and for sustained growth that's coming in, which is very important. And then the last one that's really worth mentioning is the debt consolidation. This fund is very important in that this is our debt. We have aggressively, in the last 5 years, reduced the debt in the city from 2.3 million to 1.2 million. So we've cut it in half, roughly, in 5 years. The goal is to finish that in the next 5 years, and we will see the first tax cut on your tax bills that you've seen in probably quite a while when we get that GEO bond paid off, which we hope to do about 10 years before it's due. So we are really aggressively trying to keep the city from taking out any debt at all, and our real goal is to eliminate debt in the city. So we're down to 1.2 million. I hope to be at 0 in 2030. That is a hard goal for us, but I think we can accomplish it. And that's what I have to say about it.
All right, great. I'm going to open a public hearing and call for comments from the public. You go first.
Karen Olson, live here in Waldport. I don't have an axe to grind, or I'm not trying to target somebody. But Public Works Director doing his own budget is an important issue to me. Either finding somebody who can do that, or having the current Public Works Director do his own budget and go back to the way it had been designed. Also, wondering about how the budget falls in line with the master plan that we spent quite a bit of money on. And is the council using it to guide how they do the budget and how they critique it and how it's adapted? And then what is happening to, as far as installation of new water meters that were purchased, I don't know, about 5 years ago? And is there a plan to fund the installation of those?
And I just want to ask a clarifying question, because we don't have a public works director, right? You serve as the public works director?
Superintendent.
Mine is our public works superintendent.
Right, so we don't have it.
We adopted a different model where the public works superintendent has everything but the budget creation. That allows a public works director makes about $150,000 a year. That is a fairly expensive position. When our previous public works director resigned, we were able to reallocate the positions and spread it out so that we were able to get more people in the field working and less people in administration. I would say pretty successfully that handling the budget in-house has not been a problem. And I'll ask Mike. Mike, do I ever tell you no?
No, you don't tell my guys no either. I've worked here for 18 years, and this is the best the city's ever been ran in 18 years. With the city, public works, city council, water plant, treatment plant, everybody gets along. Everybody every day wants to come to work.
Thank you. And we might keep anything down for public comment. That's appropriate. The next public comment.
Okay. How many of you know who Corey Blake is? How about, is he our attorney? Who is Carrie Shepherd? How is Carrie Shepherd being paid? These are all questions that people in our community want to know, because attorneys are not cheap. Is he on a monthly contract? I don't know. And is Is this gonna come out of the taxpayers' pockets? Just asking, because the community wants to know. And I would like to ask that this be put on the agenda, because the community does want to know how this is all gonna get paid. That's enough.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any comments? We got two more. You wanna go first?
No, you haven't.
We're not related, by the way. We haven't figured out our great-great-great-grandparents. My name is April Swift, and I lived here for 15 years. And I just wanted to say thank you for your work, and thank you for a clear budget. It's amazing how complicated it is, but you're able to like put it into categories and also explain it in simple terms so that we can digest it. Also, a gentleman in the back was asking me about, the paperwork. I don't want to see the numbers. It's online, and your charts are amazing. It has all the numbers, all the charts for all the budget items. I think it's Excel or something, but it's really something. So it is online, somewhere online. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your work on the budget committee too.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a, okay.
Photoshop that later, make me not look bad.
I'll do my best.
Question on Corona Street, the sewer was put in, was that before Corona? Was that before or after it was in?
So we put the sewer in, may I respond? We put the sewer in as a response to a property owner at the end of the street, an agreement that they would annex in because that would cover a significant or a portion of the cost. The reason we chose to do that is they were exactly at 296 feet away from our sewer line. Oregon law says that if you are 300 feet or less from sewer, that the county will not approve a septic. And so they were in a really tough spot, and we looked at so that entire area is part of a master plan that I think was referenced earlier. This master plan is how we plan on the city growth and city service growth. One of the challenges with sewer, unlike water, I can serve you, if you sit outside the city limits, I can serve you water. Unfortunately, Oregon law says that I cannot give you sewer service outside of the city limits. It's what's called urbanization. You have to annex it. And so, from our perspective, it's a trade-off. We build the system, people annex in, we receive the income to the system, to support the system, in an area that we have identified as part of the urban growth expansion plan, which that entire area from, effectively from the top of the hill over the, what's the name of the restaurant? Hilltop, thank you. Hilltop, basically Hilltop down to Governor Patterson Park. All of that is eventually going to be annexed in. It's actually all what's called an island right now, which means the city could annex it involuntarily at any time. I personally don't believe in involuntary annexation. I think people should have a reason to join the city, and this gave multiple citizens. We had one citizen who objected because they just put in a new septic, but they don't have to hook it in until that septic fails. But we had a number of citizens who were very eager for us to put that line in so that they could become part of the city, and it's part of our long-term goal, so it was a win-win.
Yeah, and anyone else here that's a crabber or salmon fisher, I'm sure they appreciate too that we don't want septic systems falling into
Right.
the ocean, so that's a good call. So, just to clarify, tax money was spent on Corona's Court or Corona Street, either.
No tax money was spent.
Where did the money come from for the city?
This is all out of the sewer reserve fund, which is part of the enterprise fund. So this is part of growing the sewer systems. So no tax money goes to that.
Alright, so no tax money, and did city workers work on it, or?
No, it was all done by a private contractor.
Okay. So, and then, once, now they are officially annexed except for that one holdout.
No. Each house
Oh, it's all
annexes
separate.
individually. So as, we will see them annexing periodically over the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay. Alright.
But the street is still a county street, and what's, actually, it's not a county street, it's owned by the county, but it's what's called a local street, which means that the citizens along that street have to pay for the improvement.
Okay. Yeah, because that street is.
Yeah, it's a
or
local
is
access
that-
street.
Yeah. So, alright.
They pay, my understanding is that group ponies up to get a load of gravel every summer and dump it in there.
They need a better crew.
Not wrong.
All right, is there any other public comment?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I just was gonna ask, on the agenda here, is it talking about the setting new water and wastewater rates? Is that coming up, or is that in the?
Yes.
That's coming up.
Yes, but you can make a comment on that right now.
I'll probably be nervous. My name is Sandy Staples. I have a home on Maple Street, and we've owned the home since about 1997, I believe. I moved down here permanently about 10 years ago. And I do have a private home. It's not a multiple dwelling. And so I have a yard and garden. And of course, I like to garden. So I have quite a bit of plants and trees and so forth. And in the past, you have had a rate in the summer because, as you might all know, your sewer bill is larger than your water consumption bill, which irritates me because a lot of my water goes into my yard and not my toilet. So I would like to request that we have the summer rate again. We now have an additional tank and storage, is my understanding, for water?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And with climate change, those of us who do have yards and want to keep them green and plants alive, use water. So I would like to object to a higher rate of water, or lower your sewer bill, whatever it takes, and then possibly readopt the summer rates for it, because climate change is here, it's real. And our summers are getting longer and hotter, and if we want to keep Oregon green, we need to water. And I love it every time it rains, because I lived in the desert in Yakima for 40 plus years, and I love the rain. So, I'll pray for more rain. So that's my complaint. Or objection.
And any more?
I think I might be confused. Was this specifically about the sewage stuff, or is this the city budget in general? Okay, never mind then. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, any comment from council before I close the hearing?
Not that I need to, but I do have I really don't have a conflict, but I always like to mention it every year, because my company does pest control for the city, but it's under the $1,000 threshold. I report it to the state every year, but I always like to make it clear that I do have that little bit of a conflict.
Can I say something to that?
Sure.
It's important to note that this contract existed prior to anyone in this room having set it up, and prior to Mr. Dunn being on the city council. This contract goes back quite a ways and is for a very small amount of money.
The state always tells me, you don't have to list that. And I go, well, I'm just trying to be honest.
But I still have to give you a 1090.
All right, well then with that, I'm going to close this public hearing, and then we're going to open the public hearing regarding the acceptance of the state revenue sharing. So now we're open to another hearing. I'm going to call for the public to comment about state revenue sharing, I guess. Anybody have a concern about that?
resolution that you have to accept the state
Okay.
revenue sharing.
All right.
State revenue sharing is one of those odd things that we're required to do this resolution, and we're required to have a hearing and say that we've had a hearing on it. But I've never heard a city in all ever turn down money from the state. Especially the cities that ban marijuana sales within the city, but still take the money from marijuana sales revenue.
So in this part of the hearing, do I say the name of the resolutions?
No, we just close the hearing and then move
Okay.
on.
Okay, so I'm gonna close the hearing. Now we're going back into the regular meeting. Somebody's phone should make a twinkle sound right now. Okay, so now we're back into the regular meeting, and I have lost these business again.
We're just on that last page.
Okay, so now we're on section 10, actions of the budget, on resolution setting new water and wastewater rates, which was just spoken about.
What page is that?
It's on the back page. Resolution.
With the resolution, do I just need to say the name and the title?
You don't
Don't even have to do that.
Don't even have to do that? I'm just, we're looking just for motions to approve?
I'll motion to approve resolution 1320.
I'll second.
Okay, sorry, I was reading it because I hadn't seen it all. All those moving in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and I say no. Especially to the 4% rates. Okay, then the next one is resolution accepting state revenue sharing. This is the funding that no one says no to. So do I have a move?
I'll make the motion to accept resolution 1321.
And all in favor? All right, no, a second? Anyone second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and again, I'm saying no because I was not present for that meetings. And then City of Waldport Resolution 1322, adopting the budget, making appropriations, imposing and categorizing tax. Do I have a move?
Where we at? We're at 1322? Yeah, 13, resolution 1322, right?
Yes.
I motion we accept 1322.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then before we close the meeting, I guess I would like to ask council, if anyone has any last statements?
I would just like to give a huge shout out to Mike and his crew because our fields were amazing for the junior league season this year that just ended. We had so many compliments from other teams. The only complaint they had is that they'd rather be at the playground that wasn't open yet. Our fields were so well maintained, it was amazing.
Excellent. Anyone else?
I just have a shout out to Megan in the Wednesday market. I had my first day yesterday with the veterans, and she rocks it out there. I don't know how she must sleep well at night when she gets done.
Excellent.
And I would just like to ask Dan to comment on, and I think Karen's gone now, I think there's her question about the water meters. But
They are actively being installed. Yeah, they're actively being installed, and it's got some growing pains along with it, but they're going in.
I got mine.
you got a new one?
I paid my floor to put one in.
Oh, no, she got shut off now.
That's the shop.
That's the shop. But good job, we're positive. You're supposed to have one.
Yeah.
And I just want to make a comment because Michelle had sent me an email about some complaints that we had received.
Yeah.
And we both agreed that it needed to be discussed here at this meeting, or discussed at a meeting instead of between the two of us. And I think both of our questions were really just, what are we doing with the complaints? And is it to be on a future agenda?
I don't think so. I think because she had asked about something, so I just clarified what the city had ruled on. That's what I did in that. Because that's all I knew. I know that like legally that's what I'm allowed to comment on, so.
Okay,
So I didn't, I haven't heard.
So you did respond to that
I did.
email? Okay.
Yes.
And has anybody else responded to any of the other complaints?
We have that hearing about all the complaints. And there was a city, like the city council put out a statement.
Because I thought that I saw 3 in my box before I came
Did you
today.
get new ones?
I don't know if they were continuance or repeating or.
I can, you did not receive harm because she sent them to the wrong place. 2 of those, I think it was 2 in there, and those were the ones that came to us after they were returned to her and sent back to us. She had the wrong address.
Okay. So you're saying that all of the complaints have been taken care of, is what I'm hearing?
There are, if I may,
Sure.
there are a handful of complaints that came in. I would say the beginning of May that I sent out to all of you. In most cases, the letters were relatively identical. You should all have copies of the email. And Madam Mayor, I do apologize because you were not at that time seated. You were not part of that originally, and I have corrected that. You should have all of that in your email now.
Okay, so I guess I was confused because I just received those letters.
Those have not been formally addressed yet. If, again, this is the rule of 2, if there is a consensus or if there are 2 of you who would like to have a hearing on those, either open or close or a discussion with the attorney at the next council meeting, we can absolutely make that happen. Or we can direct either no response or direct my office to write a, most of the letters are concerning handling of mail. They also concern the process of the meeting. Most of the letters quote the wrong process of the meeting. We can certainly correct that. However, our experience is right now that that's just going to be ended up being forwarded to the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. So we could also just allow and respond to that when Josh calls us and says, hey, here's the investigative letter, what do you want to do? I don't know that any of the people responding are not going to do that anyways, but it's entirely up to you. I serve at the pleasure of the council.
Okay, so it's my understanding that if one of us wants to have something on the agenda, we email all of us and ask if there's someone who wants to second it, or how do we get the second person?
So generally the practice has been that the person who wants something on the agenda emails it to the city manager. Because the city manager sets the agenda. The city manager will then reach out to the council and include the person who asked. And just saying, hey, we have a request for this to be on the agenda. If they get somebody who agrees, the city manager will say, this is now on the agenda and it will be set to the agenda.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else have any other questions? All right, I adjourn today's meeting 2 hours early. Thank you for all coming.
Well, howdy folks, there you have it. Wrapping up the city council meeting here at the Waldport Community Center. I think that went a lot smoother than everyone was expecting it to, thank goodness. The sheriff's deputies, they left relatively shortly into the meeting actually. I guess they didn't see any problems coming up. So all good news, and good to see Miss Lambert back in her seat on the city council. Alrighty folks, catch you on the next one, thank you.